The Romans were a practical people. They built roads, aqueducts, fortresses. They fought across the entire Mediterranean. They created an empire that lasted 1,000 years. But before starting any important matter, a war, elections, the construction of a temple, the Romans looked to the sky. They believed that the gods sent signs through birds, not just any birds, eagles, vultures, ravens, owls. What mattered was not only which bird appeared, but also where it came from, where it flew, how it cried, how it flapped its wings. From all of this, an experienced priest could read the will of the gods. These priests were called Augurs. Unlike the Haruspices, who looked at the livers of animals, the Augurs looked at the sky. They did not cut victims. They observed. And their word was law, even for consuls and emperors. The legend of Romulus and Remus is not just a story about two brothers who founded Rome. It is a story about how the Augurs got their power. Romulus and Remus argued about who would rule the new city. They did not want to fight each other. They decided to ask the gods. Each stood on his own hill, Romulus on the Palatine, Remus on the Aventine, and they waited for a sign. Remus saw it first. 6 vultures flew over his head. He shouted, "The gods are with me. I have won." But at the same moment, 12 vultures flew over Romulus. 12, twice as many. Romulus did not argue. He said, "The gods have chosen me." And he founded Rome. From that time on, no Roman ruler began any important matter without auspicium, the divination by birds. Even the emperors who had absolute power showed that they respected the will of the gods. How did an augur work? He went out at dawn. He climbed a hill or a special tower from which the sky was visible. In his hand he held a curved staff, the lichus. With this staff, he divided the sky into 4 parts, then into 16 parts. Each part was called a templum. The augur looked at his part of the sky and waited. Birds could appear on the left or on the right. Left was a sign of good luck. Right was a sign of bad luck. The Romans always faced south, so left was east, right was west. East, the side of the rising sun, good luck. West, the side of the setting sun, bad luck. But not only direction mattered. How the bird flew, fast or slow, high or low, alone or in a flock, all mattered. What it did, flapping its wings, circling, landing on the ground, all mattered. Even its call, sharp or calm, could change the interpretation. The augur remembered everything. Then he returned to those who had summoned him and announced, "The gods permit, or the gods forbid." No one could influence this. No one could bribe the augur. It was believed that he was merely transmitting the will of the gods. Not all birds were equally important to the augurs. The Romans divided them into 2 groups. The first were birds that gave signs by their flight. The second were birds that gave signs by their call and behavior. The most important flight birds were eagles and vultures. The eagle was the bird of Jupiter, the king of the gods. If an eagle appeared on the left and flew high, that was the best sign. If the eagle circled overhead, that meant the god was watching you. If the eagle landed on a building or a standard, that meant divine approval. Ravens and crows belonged to the birds that gave signs by voice. Their cawing could be good or bad. What mattered was which side it came from and how many times the bird cawed. An even number, good luck. An odd number, bad luck. Owls were considered a bad sign. Their appearance during the day was especially frightening. The owl was the bird of death. If an augur saw an owl, he immediately stopped the observation. The matter for which they had gathered was postponed, sometimes cancelled altogether. But the strangest birds in the augur's arsenal were chickens. Yes, ordinary domestic chickens. They were kept in cages and taken on military campaigns. Before a battle, the cage was opened and a handful of grain was thrown. If the chickens began to peck greedily so that the grain scattered, that was an excellent sign. The gods gave the green light. If the chickens pecked reluctantly or refused to eat, that was a bad sign. The battle was postponed. Sometimes commanders did not listen to the augurs, and they lost. The most famous case occurred during the First Punic War. The consul Publius Claudius Pulcher commanded the Roman fleet. Before the naval battle, his augurs fed the chickens. The chickens did not eat. The augurs said, "The gods are against it." Pulcher was furious. He grabbed the cage and threw it into the sea, saying, "If they will not eat, let them drink." He gave the order to attack. The Roman fleet was destroyed. Pulcher lost 93 ships and 20,000 soldiers. He was recalled to Rome, tried, and fined. He did not respect the gods. The gods punished him. The augurs had enormous political power. They could stop a meeting of the Senate. They could cancel the election of consuls. They could postpone the start of a war. One word was enough. The birds have not given a sign. This power was used not only by priests, but also by politicians. If the Senate passed a decision that one of the consuls did not like, he could say, "I will go to observe the birds." He went to a hill, looked at the sky, returned, and announced, "The birds are against it, the meeting is cancelled." This was a legitimate form of political sabotage. It was used by patricians and plebeians alike. Cicero, the great orator, was himself an augur. He wrote that augurs did not deceive. They simply interpreted the signs. But even he admitted, sometimes the signs could be interpreted in different ways. The augurs were not fraudsters. They believed in their work. But they were human, and humans tend to see what they want to see. How did one become an augur? This was not a profession for the poor. Only patricians, members of noble Roman families, could become augurs. The position was for life. The College of Augurs numbered from 3 to 15 people at different times. There was no apprenticeship in the modern sense. The future augur learned from older colleagues. He had to know all the species of birds, all the rules for dividing the sky, all the meanings of calls and flights. This was a huge amount of information kept in memory. Books on augury existed, but they were more like reference works. The ceremony of appointing an augur was solemn. The new priest received a curved staff, the lituus, and a special robe. From that moment on, he could officially conduct auspices. His word had the force of law. The last great augur of Rome was Cicero. He did not believe in the birds, as he himself wrote in his works. But he believed in tradition. He believed that the Roman state rested on the customs of the ancestors. And he defended augury as part of those customs. Archaeologists have found several augur staffs, litui. The most famous was discovered in Pompeii, the city buried by ash during the eruption of Vesuvius in the year 79 after Christ. The staff lay in a temple. It was made of ivory, skillfully carved. The top was curved like a shepherd's crook, the symbol of a shepherd leading his people. This is how the Romans understood the role of the augur. Another lituus was found in Rome on the Palatine Hill, the same hill where Romulus waited for his 12 vultures. The staff was bronze, simple without decoration. It probably belonged to a less wealthy augur, or perhaps an earlier one. A third lituus is in the British Museum. It was found in England in the ruins of a Roman villa. The augur lived at the edge of the empire, far from Rome. but his staff was exactly the same as that of his colleagues in the capital. These finds show that augury was not only a Roman phenomenon, but an empire-wide one. In Britain, in Gaul, in Spain, in Africa, everywhere there were Romans, there were also augurs looking at the sky. Claudius, the emperor who ruled Rome from 41 to 54 after Christ, was obsessed with augury. He wrote a book on Etruscan history, 20 volumes. He wrote a book on augury, 8 volumes. He wanted to revive ancient rituals that had almost been forgotten. Claudius's books have not survived. They burned with the libraries of Rome. But other authors quoted them. We know that Claudius argued augurs did not just predict, they maintained the connection between people and gods. Without them, Rome could not exist. Claudius was not only a theorist, he himself conducted auspices. He went out at dawn, took the lichus, divided the sky, and waited for birds. He believed he was doing it correctly, but many laughed at him, the lame, stuttering emperor who watched ravens. The Romans respected him, but they did not fear him. And without fear, there is no faith. Christianity destroyed augury, not immediately. First, Christian emperors simply did not consult the augurs. Then they banned public divination. Then they closed the colleges of augurs. In the 4th century, Emperor Theodosius issued an edict. No one shall consult an augur, no one shall watch birds, no one shall ask priests what will happen tomorrow. The augurs disappeared. Their staffs were broken or melted down. The temples where they worked were destroyed or turned into churches. The last augurs died in obscurity, but the idea remained. The idea that the sky sends signs. The idea that there are people who can read those signs. The idea that the future can be known if you look correctly. In the Middle Ages, astrologers picked up this idea. In the Renaissance, magicians. In our own time, people still look at the sky and search for answers. The augurs did not only predict the future, they also chose the sites for new cities. Rome, Pompeii, Capua, all these cities were founded after the augurs gave their approval. How did it work? The augur stood at the center of the future city. He divided the sky into parts. He waited for birds. If birds came from the left, the place was good. From the right, bad. Sometimes the augurs deliberately released sacred chickens. The chickens pecked grain. The gods agreed. The chickens turned away. Find another place. In Pompeii, archaeologists found traces of such a ceremony. In the layer beneath the city, they discovered a pit with the remains of sacrifices. Animal bones, grain, small figurines of gods. All of this was buried at the moment of the city's foundation. The augur said, "Here will be a city." And the city grew. The Romans believed that without an augur, a city could not be sacred. And without a sacred city, there was no protection from the gods. The most famous legend about the augurs is the story of Attius Navius. He lived in the 7th century before our era, during the time of King Tarquin the Elder. The king planned a reform. He wanted to add 3 new cavalry centuries. But Attius Navius said, "The gods are against it. The birds have given no sign." The king grew angry. He said, "You, wise man, predict from birds. I predict from what I see with my own eyes. Here is a whetstone. I will cut it in half with a razor. If you are such a prophet, tell me, will I succeed or not?" Attius Navius thought and said, "You will succeed." Tarquin took the razor and slashed the stone. The razor cut the stone in half. The king was speechless. He understood that arguing with the gods was useless. He cancelled the reform. The whetstone was kept in Rome for a long time. It was shown to ambassadors and guests as proof of the power of the augural art. For the Romans, this story was not a fairy tale, but a lesson. The augur cannot be deceived. One cannot argue with him. He speaks on behalf of the gods. Emperor Augustus, the first ruler of the Roman Empire, understood the power of the augural tradition. He himself was an augur. After his victory over Antony and Cleopatra, he restored ancient temples and rituals. He showed favorable auspices to the public. He minted on his coins his augural staff, the lichus. Every Roman saw the emperor was the chosen one of the gods. The tradition survived for another 400 years. The last mentions of functioning augurs date to the end of the 4th century. Then Christianity banned pagan rituals. The augurs disappeared. But their staffs, their temples, their legends remained. Thank you for listening. Rest well. The story continues.